Naši gosti večeras su pored njega Jelena Jovanović, stručnjak za mrežnu bezbednost, aktivista, predstavit će se još ona, doktor docent Tamara Vučenović, komunikolog, urednik emisije Digitalne ikone na Radio Beogradu 2 i Goran Skrobonja, autor, prevodilac, kako god. Da ne bude zabune, Goran Skrobonja nije preveo ovu knjigu, ali nam je preveo zato neki drugi iz edicije Netopija, otud on ovde. I sad jedno glavno pitanje za sve vas. Da li je neophodno da prevodimo na engleski? Molim? Sa engleskog. Ovo ćemo da dignemo ruku sad, pošto mi niko ne odgovara kome je neophodan prevod, da znamo zbog toga što je priča o Darknetu vrlo fluidna. Bartlett ima vrlo dobro govori engleski bez nekog specijalnog akcenta, britanskog akcenta koji bi bio težak za razumevanje. Zbog toga vas pitam jer će nam prevod usporiti stvar. Znači nije neophodno da ga nemamo, ali ako bi moglo da ide brže, da nam bude prosto svima dinamičnije i prijemčivije, zato je neophodno da vas pitam. Ne znam koliko vam je pre svega oblast Darkneta poznata. Kako kome? Nekom da, nekom ne. Upravo ste. Jel možemo i tako? Ako ste čuli... Ja pretpostavljam da svi razumeju. Sad, Jamie Bartlett je vrlo uhodan što se tiče govora, tako da će ovo biti zaista veoma zanimljivo, ali ukoliko vi u nekom trenutku osetite potrebu nešto da ga pitate, da uletite sa nekim komentarom ili već s nekom aktualnom temom, što da ne, jer ideja nam je bila da iskoristimo priliku za ovo njegovo gostovanje ovde i prosto prodiskutujemo o svim onim stvarima koje nemamo toliko često priliku da čujemo. Znači da ne bude prosto jedno predavanje ex katedra, nego da imamo jedan živ razgovor, nadam se da ćemo u tome uspeti. Hvala.
I don't know what you just said. Are you saying that I've got to speak now?
Yes.
Right, okay.
Exactly. So I asked them if they know something about Darknet because I learned from you and your speeches. So you said this is what you ask your audience, more or less, right?
Yes, okay. And you don't need a translator?
Yes. For the moment, no.
Okay.
If something happens and we get stuck, then...
I'll try to make sure I speak clearly and maybe a bit more slowly than usual. Well, thank you for having me. Thank you all for coming. I'll say just a few things about this book, not too much, because I'd like us to talk about it. But have you all been following the story with Mark Zuckerberg and Facebook and the election and all of this stuff? Yes, exactly right. So this has become, what I think is interesting about this, suddenly people are really thinking about their data and their online behavior and who's collecting information about them, what that information can be used to do, and a kind of realization among a lot of people that maybe many of us understood, but that actually controlling your information and being able to see what you're doing is incredibly powerful. And the prospect and possibilities now with constantly connected devices to monitor and follow you everywhere you go and understand the things you do, the things you care about, who you might vote for, what matters to you in your life, are incredible possibilities for that level of surveillance. When you go onto the darknet, people don't collect your data. They're not following you around and serving you up adverts. It's a completely different place. And the darknet originally was a place explicitly to avoid those sorts of things. So I think that we might see in the years ahead a lot more darknet type networks, more people joining the darknet, more people spending time there. You want to know what it is though, don't you? Don't even know what it is yet. Okay, I'll tell you. There's two things that are important to know about the darknet. One is, well, firstly, has anyone ever been onto the darknet? I thought you were going to say that you had, yeah, some reason, because you got a computer there, you know, yeah. So there's two things about the darknet that are important. The first is there's the technical term for a network of websites, and everyone calls that the darknet. It's a network of between 5 and 30,000 websites that are very, very difficult to remove from the internet, that are very difficult to censor and control, and that you can only visit using a special web browser called the Tor browser that allows you to browse the internet anonymously so that you can't be easily tracked or traced. This was originally a project, just like the internet itself, of the US military. Actually, it was the US Navy that came up with this in the first place. I bet they're regretting that now, but never mind. They're probably regretting the whole internet, to be honest. But this was the idea, a place where you couldn't be tracked, where you couldn't be traced. And as a result, this darknet has become a very natural place for people who want to hide something or who don't want to be found. There are between 4 and 5 million daily users of this special web browser. And some of them, not all of them, but some of them use it to go onto this special darknet. And it's not all bad. The things that are on there, they're not all illegal at all. You have a lot of whistleblowers there, a lot of journalists that go there. You have legitimate websites who think it's a safer way for people to... Facebook even has a darknet site as well. So if you don't want to be followed onto Facebook by the government, you can go onto Facebook through the darknet. There's a lot of good reasons that people use this. But of course, there's a criminal element as well. And criminals are always early adopters of new technology. That's a kind of law. And so you have a lot of illegal pornography, you have commercially available hacking services, and probably most infamously of all, you have drugs markets and stolen data markets that operate there. There's 20 or 30 of them, and they look and feel just like Amazon or eBay, except you are buying cocaine, marijuana, stolen information, guns, and so on. And it's a very peculiar place because the trick to why this all works, just like Amazon or eBay, you have people going onto these sites, buying their drugs, and then going back onto them. They pay in Bitcoin, they put in an address, they get it delivered to them, and then when they've used it, they go back onto the site, and just like Amazon, they put a user review on, like, the vendor who sold me these drugs was very polite and kind and informative. The drugs arrived as promised in the post. They were excellent quality. I give this vendor 5 stars out of 5. And this is the trick of these marketplaces, is that they are competitive markets. Yes, they use Bitcoin, the cryptocurrency that's hard to monitor. They use this special web browser. They use encrypted messaging. But at the core, they are competitive marketplaces. And as a result, people use them because they offer good customer service, very good products at a very low price. And I give that example because it's just one in the book where all is not as it seems in these strange corners of the internet. And that's what I wanted to do with this. I spent a year of my life in all sorts of different underground, sort of dark, hidden internet subcultures. Spent time, this is why I look the way I do. I used to be fresh-faced, just like you, sir. Whereas, you know. Anyway, so I spent a year of my life trying to become immersed into all of these strange internet subcultures. Some of them were on the darknet, like this drugs market. But some of them were on the normal internet. So I spent my time with internet trolls who would spend all day trying to bully people. I spent my time with neo-Nazis in forums dedicated to this. I spent my time in pro-suicide and pro-eating disorder forums where people would talk openly and honestly about why they should engage in very extreme dieting, very dangerous behavior. And I tried, each chapter is one of these things, one of these subcultures. I basically tried to go into these places so you people wouldn't have to. So you could just read about them. And I tried, wherever I could, to not only be online with these people, but then to find the real person behind the screen, the offline people too. So when I would spend my time with the neo-Nazis in the forum, in the blog forum or whatever, I would then go and find them offline and meet them and spend time with them in the real world too. So I spent my time online and offline to try to understand what the people in these subcultures, these hidden internet subcultures, were really like. And they're never quite how you think they are. This is the one kind of lesson that I would take away from this. The drugs markets are highly competitive places that offer good customer service. The pro-suicide and pro-eating disorder forums are friendly, welcoming communities who are trying to help each other, but that have got stuck in this very, very strange world. And they're trapped in a social group that they can't really escape from. Some of the trolls who are spending their lives bullying people, when you meet them in person, they're very shy and quiet. They're very nervous people. On the internet, they're very brave and they're very big. And then you meet them in person and you are very surprised that they're actually quite small and shy. And they're almost making up for it sometimes with an online persona that's radically different. So that's the story of this book. It's trying to uncover those parts of the internet that you maybe heard about but didn't really know much about, and showing you what it really is like. And I'll stop with that, and then we can discuss it.
Hi, my name is Delfi, I'm a journalist, and I have a serial of my own websites. None of them are on the darknet. But I'm afraid, and that's just a discussion. First of all, a question. Have you met any Serb in this bully group?
Have I met any Serbs?
Yes or no?
I wouldn't know.
No,
I mean, a lot of the time I wouldn't know.
Then you didn't research very well. Trust me.
But however, in my next book, I went to Liberland on the Serbian-Croatian border with Bit Jedlička and that whole thing, which was a hilarious adventure. But that's for another time. Yeah,
and the comment on the Facebook on the darknet. If the Facebook is on the darknet, I'm afraid that we need blacknet. That's all.
Even darker.
Yeah.
Even darker. Yes, I think we're going to see. It's going to be interesting to see the extent to which there is a sustained move away from this free social media in exchange for your information. This model that we've all been involved in for the last 10 years. People on the darknet for a long time have been warning about this. These are the people saying, this is terrible, this is dangerous. You have to have better privacy on the internet. You have to use encryption. You have to use a Tor browser so you're not being followed. And most of us, 5 years ago, said that those guys were crazy. You know, these crazy anarchists, these libertarians, they're mad. And this book as well, I mean, there's a whole chapter about Bitcoin and where Bitcoin came from and what Bitcoin's about. And again, a lot of the people who first read it said, oh, those Bitcoin people, they're crazy. It's never going to work. No one's going to like it. No one's going to want it. And, you know, it's interesting to me to see how some of these fringe ideas that people dismiss can quite quickly actually become picked up as mainstream. And some of the stories in this book, I think that's what's happened.
If I may make a small amendment to Facebook onion address, I basically think it's a trap,
because once Facebook got on onion routers and onion address, the government started collecting your onion address access. So they do have your data, they do have your name and your phone number and everything, and on top of that they have onion address you're accessing from. So, which is not a big thing right now because most of the VPNs and Tor servers are mapped a long time ago, but as a result, as a direct political result, we have people who are maintaining servers on Tor being arrested and being put to jail only because they enable people to talk anonymously and with censorship-resistant weaponry, let's say like that. Yeah,
so,
of course.
Do you think that this is a trap that Facebook intentionally laid for people? Because I know the person that built that, and I would be astonished if he was secretly working for the government. I don't know. You never know for sure. So you think that Facebook put that up on purpose to trap people?
That was intended. I'm not really sure. I can't tell if that was intended result, but it is a result, and really many people from the Tor community and cypherpunks community raised their voice against it. There was even an operation to restore the darknet and to hack Tor and to replace it with some other onion router. So the Brave was in the game, Brave browser. Then there were like few crowds on GitHub developing different kinds of browsers, mostly people from NASA. And then it stopped because they had other projects to put their time in. But I'm not sure if it was intended or not, but all the governments, and especially Facebook, which is intra-governmental entity, are working for we know right now that they were working for different kind of political campaigns and projects. They do actually have your data, and they will collect as much data as you can provide, even if it's on your address. Right now on botnet, and even on ClearNet, you can get catalogs of botnets. So if you want to buy a botnet, you can list the catalog and see if you want to choose Vietnam or, well, Serbia, thankfully, is not in the catalog. Neither is Kosovo. So you can't really hire Kosovo botnet to do whatever. People who are analyzing web traffic for years, they are aware that most of the DDoS attacks in the United States are made by botnets, which are run by the government. So most of the things you can find on Darknet, you can find on ClearNet as well, except the ClearNet is not censorship resistant, and it's not really so anonymous. I'm not really sure if, of course, military project called Internet is big part of our lives right now, but I'm not really sure they're sorry, because as of 3 years ago, DARPA invested in a project called Mimix, which is led by a leader of Tor, Roger Dingledin, and the ultimate goal is to hack Darknet and to follow people on Darknet, to compile, to collect their metadata they leave unintentionally, and to trace people around the Darknet. So the same players all over again are starting to rule the Darknet as well as ClearNet, which is not as dangerous as it may seem, because all the dark corners like camgirls and drug traffic and porn, which is illegal in the United States and UK, it's not legal here. You can here download stuff as well. Nobody will be after you. You won't have to pay fines. Downloading for private purpose is legal. They are flooding.
What is legal?
Downloading movies, pirating content.
I thought you were suggesting downloading child pornography was legal.
No.
Sorry, I misunderstood what you.
I apologize. Yeah. Okay. So by the way, I am network analyst, but I'm someone who started the career without having a goal. So I shifted 3 times. And right now I'm a network security analyst. And also I was hanging out with Liberland and trolls and pirates. Some of the right-wing trolls were even in Belgrade a few years ago, and I met them only because I thought that their right-wing tattoos are photoshopped, and that that's also a way of trolling, but it wasn't. So I would hand this out to Tamara.
Okay. I have one question, only one, for the beginning. Give us some details, please, about your research, talking to those people offline. looking at those pictures, buying drugs, what was maybe the worst experience and maybe the best one?
Just to respond very briefly to your points about Tor, the way that I see the darknet and the Tor browser generally, and this might get a bit sort of technical and boring potentially, but to be brief, I don't see anything as being perfectly secure from the government, obviously, especially not the NSA or our GCHQ in the UK. But what I see that it can do, especially the use of the anonymous browser, is to simply make it slightly more difficult for the authorities to monitor you. It just takes more work, more coordination with other countries and other police forces, which makes it more expensive, which means fewer people end up getting monitored. That's my kind of analysis of the role that something like Tor plays. In the UK, one of the great problems for the police, it's local police that are dealing with this a lot of the time, rather than the big intelligence agencies, and they can't do much. They don't have much technical skills, so when they are trying to investigate something and they see someone's using one of these browsers or on the darknet, there's not much they can do, because our top intelligence agencies just ignore them. They don't want to work with the police because that's too unimportant for them. So even if you have at the top level great abilities to monitor the nodes or run the nodes or whatever, for local police forces, that's no help at all. So I see that particularly with this web browser, the Tor browser, this is the problem I think it's creating for the local police rather than the very big intelligence agencies. We could maybe carry on talking about that later. But this book isn't all about that. There's just a couple of chapters in that book about the Tor network, and it's not really I don't know if you've read it, but it's not really a technical description of it. It's more just about this is how some people are using it, especially the marketplaces, which became very infamous. And the reason I wrote about it is because it became quite misunderstood. People didn't really know, they didn't realize it was kind of about consumer choice and good products and that kind of thing. And I thought that was important for people to understand, how it actually operated. A lot of it is, like you say, it's about actually meeting people who are behind the screen, who are the sort of the monsters under the bed that we imagine to be really, really scary and terrifying. And then when you meet them, you find they're not really like that at all. So, sometimes they are, but not always. It really depends. But so to give you a couple of examples, one of the weirdest things I did was to attend a live webcam sex show. There's this entire industry of women who are basically making pornography from their bedrooms through their webcam, and people watching from home donate small amounts of money if they like it or if they do certain things. And I was probably quite naive because I didn't really know much about this at all. But I got in touch with several of the UK's better-known webcam girls, they call themselves. She's about 25 years old. She's called Vex. And I said, can I actually come and sit in while you do one of your performances? And to my astonishment, she said, fine. I don't mind, you can come. In fact, next week I have a special performance with me and 2 other women. We're performing together. You can come to that if you want. And so I spent 4 hours in her bedroom as she was performing this show to 10,000 people at their homes who were all watching through the webcam. And I mean, frankly, it was quite boring. After 4 hours, actually after about 20 minutes, it was quite boring. But it was very interesting to see what an excellent business person she was. How brilliant she had worked out the way of trying to make money from people. We had a big discussion about, do you feel like you're being you're being used somehow, or you're being degraded or anything like that? And she's convinced, no, she's in charge, she's in control. I write a lot about that because it's kind of difficult to be sure, to be honest, but you can read it and find out. But at one point, she made about, I can't remember exactly, but I think she made about 600 or 700 euros in that session. Each one of them made that much money. That's how much people were giving money from home. It was a really interesting business model that I did not know anything about. But anyway, one of the strange moments was that she's always looking for ways to make some more money. And suddenly, she's in the middle of the show, and then she looks at the camera and says, by the way, everybody, I have a journalist with me today. He's sitting just over here off the camera. And they were replying, no, I don't believe you. And she just looked at the camera and said, and he said, his name's Jamie, and he said, if you donate $100 in the next 5 minutes, he'll come onto the screen and say hello. And I was sitting there going, no. They all started to donate money really quickly. She made $100 in about 30 seconds. And so she came over and grabbed hold of me, like pulled me off my chair, because I was sitting there with my notepad and like taking notes, and then sat me down in front of this camera with 10,000 men at home watching. And I just said, oh, hello, everybody. And so somebody at home obviously took a screen grab of that and then sent it to me. So I have the image forever. And that was it was an interesting example of how you could easily write a newspaper article saying, oh, there's these women in the bedrooms and they're making pornography and it's really exploitative and it's this and it's that but it's not like that when you're there. It's very important to remember when you see these things happening online, there are people behind it there with lives and stories, and they're not quite how they seem. And it was the same when I met internet trolls and radicals from all across the spectrum. And it's a very strange thing because one guy, a neo-Nazi guy, online he's so angry and aggressive and nasty, and then offline he's very quiet and timid and shy. And I was interested to sort of understand the difference between why were you this way online and that way offline. And I mean, it was almost like he'd found a community online. Online, he was an angry, aggressive guy who was insulting everybody, shouting at people, and the more he did that, the better respected he became within the community of other right-wing racists. He became more and more well-known, the angrier he was. And then he got all his affirmation, all his interaction with people, all his sense of sort of importance from being that online person. And then when you took him offline, he didn't have anything. He was a very lonely guy. He lived on his own up north, away from... He was very sort of isolated, in fact. And it was when I met him online, I thought, I'm never going to like this guy. I'm going to hate him. When I met him offline, though, guess what? We found things in common. We both supported the same football team. We both were both similar age, so we used to like the same television programs when we were children. And we found like weird ways of connecting as humans. That's not to excuse anything he's done or anything he's doing, but it's a very strange way that you do connect differently online to people as you do offline. You get a much more one-dimensional version of them. Sometimes that's really good, but sometimes that can be really bad, and it always means you never really quite understand the real person.
Jamie, I must say that I really enjoyed the webcam chapter. It was very well written. Okay.
Well, that's the translator. I mean, I owe the translator a good...
You are saying that more and more people are being aware of the value of their data, and they are now going to darknet.
Well, I'm saying maybe. Maybe that's one that you can... Because this is your area too, but I'm saying possibly they will start to, as a result of some of the recent stories.
What I want to ask you, your book was published in 2014, right?
Originally, yes.
Yes, originally. Today it's 2018. What changed in the meantime?
Well, the price of Bitcoin changed a lot, but I never bought any when I was writing the book. Annoyingly.
You never got one as
No,
a
I
present?
never did, because I always thought it would compromise my writing. You know, because I was writing about these things, and I thought if I owned them, I wouldn't be able to be objective about it.
But after you published the book?
No, I still didn't. No. It wouldn't have mattered if I was objective or not. I could have been so rich that I didn't care anymore, but never mind. Never mind. What changed? Well, a lot of things have changed. A lot more default encryption is being built into technology companies' platforms. A lot of the companies, I think, have begun to realise the commercial value, to some extent, of being a bit more cognizant, understanding that people do care about some degree of privacy, and they've built them in as default. I mean, a lot more two-factor authentication on different types of platforms and email accounts and so on. So I think, again, this is maybe one for you, but I think there has been a significant increase in the default options available for people, and that's a good thing, because a lot of what stops people using this stuff is laziness. I mean, they just can't be bothered to download a special browser and encrypt this and encrypt that. You could get a lot more from just having a default system that's stronger. Sure, yeah. So yeah, and of course the explosion. So I actually predicted when the book came out, everyone's going to use Tor one day, and because everyone's going to care about this, and that was too optimistic. But what I didn't see is that it's taken a slightly different shape. This proliferation of encrypted messaging apps, for example, which is not quite the same as Tor, but it's working to a very similar sorts of principle. And that has gone very, very mainstream. I mean, even WhatsApp, I know there's a lot of problems with WhatsApp, but some slightly more sort of strengthened protection has definitely happened. But the basics here is, of course, about human behaviour as well. And none of, I mean, frankly, trolling, eating disorder sites, people buying drugs online, none of that's changed, and none of that's ever going to change, because that's just what people do. Maybe you'd like to say something about the... Yeah,
I was just thinking of Alex Jones, who said that he would eventually buy a prostitute for bitcoins as he would do the same for the dollars. So he's kind of supporting the industry regardless of currency. And I wanted to say something about Bitcoin, because it's quite crypto anarchistic thing, as you know, if you have met with Jadlička. Bitcoin is direct result of people who thought, hey, we have a problem with money. There's not enough money in the world. We do have a problem with money, so let's reinvent money. The same thing happened with politics. Politics is wrong. We can't really elect our representatives. They're not really accountable. So let's reinvent politics. And you know that at the same time, the group of people from Czech Republic, UK, and Thailand got to a brilliant idea to claim an island between Serbia and Croatia and to declare it their land, liberal land. They're right now in Novi Sad, tomorrow, I think, in Belgrade. Yeah. And they also support Bitcoin as well as any other currency in the world. Tomorrow, or maybe as we speak right now, they're having a discussion, should all taxes be voluntary, or are there taxes who can be really mandatory? So against taxes, against restrictions, and against borders, that's one political dimension of Bitcoin. Yeah, go ahead.
I would like to ask you just if you are seeing us get the Liberland.
Yes. Yeah, but everyone knows that. Croats hate them, so we support them, and yeah.
I tried to get to Liberland with Vit, and we were stopped by the Croatian police on the border. Yeah, the Serbian police were quite happy to let us go. They were like, yeah, go for it. But the Croatian police stopped us. But that's another story. But the one of the interesting things I've tried to, what I've tried to do in this book as well, I think the ideas of Bitcoin and having distributed currency and even beneath the currency, the idea of having distributed ways of storing and verifying information is very, very important technology. And what I've tried to do with this Darknet book is to explain roughly how that works without it being too technical, because I'm not really that technical myself. I just try to get enough technical understanding so I think I basically understand it and can explain it in a way for non-technical people to just grasp the basic concept of it. Because that's what's important with things like some of these technologies. I want as many people to understand them. Not everyone's going to be able to be computer scientists and in network specialists and encryption specialists, but it's important to, I think, increasingly important to just understand the basic concepts of why they matter, how they work, what it might mean, how you could use it. So that's partly what I've tried to do with this book, is to tell stories about people, but also explain bigger concepts in a kind of accessible way, because I think there's a real need for that at the moment. You know, we've got a lot of very complicated technology, and I don't know if anyone watched the Senate hearing when they were questioning Mark Zuckerberg yesterday. Some of these senators and congressmen and congresswomen were good. Some of them didn't understand how the internet works. And these are the people that are supposed to hold these companies to account. And again, I can't think of anything worse than a world in which every politician was a computer scientist. No insult to any computer scientists here. But, you know, that's one particular industry. You want politicians to be broad, but they have to have a basic understanding of the way the digital economy now works. Otherwise, they'll never be able to hold these people to account. So part of the mission of this book is just trying to spread the ideas about in an easy-to-understand way.
Okay, and now I have a question. I have a question for Jelena. Who is that little Paul with us? Is he or her your avatar, online avatar, or what?
Hello. This is Bitcoin Rat, member of CryptoRat.com community from Manchester.
Is that
it
Twitter?
Is. Yes.
That's on Twitter?
Yes, that's original Bitcoin. I'm not. I'm just one of the many who are taking Bitcoin Rat with them on a traveling. So under the hashtag BitWorld Tour, you can see all 5 continents with really many rats like this attending concerts, looking from Tokyo or Paris, and yeah, he's glad to meet you.
Yeah, well, hello.
Hello.
I have on Twitter, I often have an account that messages me that's Bitcoin Rat. And I don't know who it is. So it's not you?
No, it's not me. Last weekend in Manchester, there was CoinFest UK, so he was there, and you could have met him. It's, yeah.
Interesting.
It's like an anti-routine.
Yeah.
That's what everyone says, yes.
Yeah.
It's a Bitcoin Rat. It's a stuffed toy which is created to increase the popularity and the visibility of Bitcoin, because I have to say I had bad luck. Just the weekend before I arrived in Amsterdam, in the Bitcoin Embassy was a meeting where people from countries which are hit with a crisis, financial crisis, military crisis, and food chain crisis at the end, like from Venezuela, were speaking about Bitcoin and how it changed their lives, how they made them survive the crisis. So that's the political dimension we are not quite yet aware of. What governments know is that they want to regulate it, of course, and probably it's going to be in your next book, but people who are world-known, recognized, so-called dictators. Some of them actually decided to let it go and to say there is no taxation on cryptocurrency obtaining or alienation or trading, like Alexander Lukashenko from Belarus, which was quite surprising for me because we know that he was like bigger dictator than Milosevic, right? So that guy decided not to impose any restrictions on cryptocurrency trading. It's usual that when governments realize that there is some money in it, they try to acquire bitcoins. So it happened with Silk Road. Silk Road happened after your book got published. So what's your opinion on the Silk Road trial?
So this is the guy that ran the Silk Road, Ross Ulbricht, although there's some details still that we're not quite sure about, whether he had a co-conspirator, and there was some problems with the trial because some of the FBI agents involved had also been taking some Bitcoin as well. So the whole thing was rather complicated. So he was the guy, Ross Ulbricht, who was running the Silk Road. He was caught in a library in San Francisco after quite a lengthy police investigation. And he was convicted for multiple life sentences. I think it was 2 or 3 life sentences on what in the US is known as the kingpin charge, which is basically when you are running a criminal enterprise. It's typically in the US that is used for mobsters, the people that run gangs, so they don't actually commit any direct felonies themselves, but they're making all the money from the enterprise. And he was convicted on those charges. And so he received, 200 years in prison or whatever it is. For running an online marketplace. Now, I think a couple of things about that. In another setting, Ross Ulbricht would be considered to be a business genius. He created a functioning, anonymous marketplace using cryptocurrencies that was making him $10,000 a day in commission, that thousands of people around the world were using. I mean, if you see it that way, it's quite an incredible achievement. However, of course, he was also a criminal, so, he's got to get arrested in the end. But what I found interesting was quite how severe the punishment was. So multiple life sentences he received. And the judge in the case said that she basically said, we have to give you an exemplary punishment, i.e., we have to make an example of you. This is why it was such a harsh punishment. And I see that partly as a sign of weakness on the part of the government, because I think the reason they are so hard on this is because they understand just how potentially damaging this technology can be for their control over the internet and over what people do. I think they're genuinely afraid of this technology and of cryptocurrencies, because they know that if they can lose control, the idea that you could, right under the noses of the police, that you could be buying and selling things and they can't stop you, this is such a big challenge to governments that they had to make an example of him. And so to me, that's the thing I found interesting about it, was that it was because they're so worried, and because often I don't think they can stop this. They think their biggest power is deterrence, i.e., let's scare people from using it again. And that's why I see it as a sign of weakness, because they know they can't arrest everybody. They know they can't stop it, so they've got to scare people. And I see the same thing happening when it comes in the UK, my country, when it comes to online extremism. We are putting in place ridiculous punishments for people who are simply reading things or downloading like extremist or terrorist material. You get sent to prison for 10 years just for downloading a video about something. I mean, and to me, again, this is deterrence. This is because they know they can't stop it. They have to scare people into not doing it. This is why I see it as a sign of weakness and not of strength. And I'm afraid, I think the next one coming is going to be Bitcoin. The cryptocurrencies, that they are this year and next year, they'll really start trying to regulate it more, to exercise their control. Yeah, I can imagine.
But as for UK, it's quite interesting that in UK, what the government did, actually their governmental body for regulation of food safety, made an operation to crack down on darknet. And they basically arrested between 5 and 20 dealers on darknet who were selling bacon and dairy products. So that's how far police can go. It was not about child pornography. In Sweden, in Serbia, and in UK, you can get laughable sentences for child pornography. But if you are having Tor node, if you are downloading some content from internet, if you're practicing free speech, then the sentences and punishments are much deeper. You remember Aaron Schwartz as well, so he was also made example. The guy, Aaron Schwartz, made a suicide. So I think the trend of arresting and punishing smart computer kids needs to stop. And there is a crime before darknet, and there will be crime after the internet in post-tech era. And this is certainly not the way to make more pressure on people, because you can't kill an idea. You say it yourself. We are many and we are going to win.
Maybe. I'm not sure. Not sure who's going to win. There was a question there.
The legal repercussion if individual wants to reinforce the Tor network, not to run illegal enterprise, but just to reinforce it as a free speech.
It's not illegal to run a node or to go on there or anything. It's not illegal. No?
Because a lot of nasty data can go through your maybe node or...
Yeah, there was a couple of cases, I think in Germany for a while, they were thinking like, can we prosecute people that are running nodes because illegal traffic might be running through their nodes? But I think they gave that up, because that would run entirely against the principle of the internet. You can't hold people responsible if they're just switching packets. So they didn't. But I know they were thinking about it, and some people who I know were running nodes were really worried, thinking, am I going to get arrested on the basis that I've knowingly facilitated the sharing of illegal material? But I haven't seen anyone arrested for anything like that before. So.
Downloading something, because automatically you upload, you get like 1,000 euros a fine.
For doing what?
For downloading music or movies.
Oh no, yeah, but that's a slightly different thing. Are you talking about pirating material? I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about when you run a bit of the Tor network, because when you run some of the Tor network, like it's basically a sort of volunteers keep the thing going, often by giving up their own computers, and the traffic can sometimes pass through their computers, but they're not downloading anything themselves. So it's a little bit different. You're not pirating stuff when you do that. Yeah.
If I may explain, I happen to be a policy geek as well. The thing you talked about happened in Germany, and it's still on, but the thing with the arresting Tor node operators is off right now, because Germany had a law called Steuerhaftung, which means that the one who's storing data or who is enabling data transfer or traffic holds a liability for that data. So if it's child pornography, the one who is providing Wi-Fi network or Tor server was held liable. Pirate Party Germany won that case on European Court on Human Rights last year or the year before. So as of that point, it's not illegal and you can't be hunted for operating a Tor node. But for piracy, Germany is famous for all kinds of DMCA complaints and banning and filtering internet. So when we talk about punishment or what's legal, we should specify which country it is. Usually Five Eyes countries are different from the free world.
I want to change the subject a bit. I want to ask you about last chapter of the book. It reminded me on Black Mirror series, and it was mind-blowing. So my question is, immortality on one side or gay people on the other in the future? What do you think about this?
Yeah, we'll probably have both, won't we? I mean, the final chapter was just looking at the general ways that society thinks about technology and trying to find two radically different extreme ends of those who really want to embrace all technology as much as possible, and they're the transhumanists, which is a very interesting movement, actually. People who think we can and should use science and technology to radically improve the human condition. And on the other side, the sort of almost like neo-Luddites, the group of people who want to smash technology to get rid of it, to return to a much simpler way of life. Because I kind of feel like they're the two extremes of a tension that we all have in society, between those who are very welcoming of technology and they embrace it and they want to use it, and those who are a bit more skeptical and concerned about it. And so I thought I'd find the fringes of those two lines of thought, and that would allow me to sort of imagine a future. And to me, both of those scenarios will kind of play off each other as well. So I can very well imagine that we have a big surge in transhumanist thinking. I mean, amazingly, life extension technology is improving very quickly. Google's investing an awful lot of money into this. Transhumanists believe greatly in using artificial intelligence to change our economies so we don't have to do boring, monotonous work. And that movement is almost inevitably going to grow. It's going to continue to get bigger. I'm sure of it. I also think that radical anti-technology movements will be one of the big extremist movements we'll worry about in the next 20 years or so. I can very well imagine a new wave of... have you people here heard of Ted Kaczynski, the Unabomber? The American terrorist from the 90s who killed 3 people or maybe 4 people with letter bombs, and he'd lived off-grid for a long time, and he's the kind of most famous or most infamous recent neo-Luddite who saw that technology was not a force of liberation but actually was one of oppression and control, and it allowed powerful governments and powerful companies to control ordinary people. And he thought there was something inherent in digital technology that made it that way. So he wanted to destroy this technology, and that's what he did. Now, if you download, I'm sure it's not illegal, if you download Ted Kaczynski's manifesto, a 20,000-word rant about how technology is ruining everything, it reads remarkably modern. It's 25 years old, but a lot of the things he's talking about, you now find serious journalists in the Guardian newspaper saying exactly the same thing about big tech companies controlling everything, artificial intelligence is going to destroy our economy, this is now a way that we're having our minds controlled. His thinking has actually gone really mainstream. I feel like we are in the middle of quite a big tech backlash at the moment across society. So that last chapter, I think, it's of course slightly exaggerated because I took the real, radical fringes of those lines of thinking. But I think that how society sees technology and whether they like it or dislike it is going to become one of the really important political dividing lines of the future. So there's my prediction. We're going to see people are going to smash machines in the next 5... Okay, let me just give you an example. Self-driving cars and self-driving trucks. And I've been in a self-driving truck. I travelled 150 miles in a self-driving truck in Florida for the BBC. And if it's true that the technology becomes as powerful as it does, and we don't really know, to be honest, and self-driving taxis become a reality and they hit our streets, does anybody here honestly think that taxi drivers will just stand around and say, okay, we've lost our jobs, never mind, in 100 years, I'm sure my great-great-great-great-grandchildren will be wealthier than I am, so that's fine? No, they won't. They'll smash these machines up. Already we've had Uber demonstrations and riots. Just Uber, because taxi drivers are quite protective of their sometimes monopolies they hold in cities. And imagine what it's like if it's self-driving taxis. So I think one of the big tasks for society actually is to make sure this tech backlash doesn't go too far and then we end up smashing all of this stuff that could actually really help make us wealthier and happier. And it sounds a bit crazy to talk about that now, but I genuinely think a return of Luddism is something that we need to be thinking about.
What to be scared of?
To be scared of, yeah. To work out as well, therefore, how we make sure the technological advances, the benefits of those are spread around society. To me, that is such an important task.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Then I would say thank you for being our guest.
Thank you for having me.
Hvala svima što ste bili ovdje.
I'm sorry I'm late.
Ah, okay.
What's your prediction? What's the future of Bitcoin?
I think that you're going to be better for this one, but well, like I said already, I think the next 2 years is going to be crucial because there's going to be a lot more government regulation of these kinds. So, like, different countries will do it in slightly different ways. I also think, just like we saw in Russia, some autocratic countries will set up their own versions of a cryptocurrency, which will make monitoring of financial transactions brilliant for government. It will be very good to help them raise taxes, but it will be very good if there was a government-run cryptocurrency. This will be terrifying, and ironically, for the people that love Bitcoin, they must hate the fact that it's going to be used by a Russian government, potentially, or whoever else, Venezuela, whatever, to better monitor people, because that's the opposite of really what was intended. So there's that lesson about technology, how it's often not used in the way that people want. So the good technology is often used by the bad guys, and then sometimes the bad technology is used by the good guys, and then sometimes the technology for one thing is used by these people, and that's all governments. When they start seeing that they are losing taxation revenue from cryptocurrencies, I mean, they're not just going to sit there like my taxi drivers. They're not just going to sit there and let it happen. There's going to be a real pushback against it. And of course, everyone says this now and it's boring, but I will say it because maybe you guys don't follow it quite as closely. There's so much activity in other types of blockchain-based, the underlying technology of cryptocurrencies. It is the most exciting area. There is so much activity and people are building platforms and building marketplaces and building Ubers and building domain name records and building entire countries in Liberland and voting systems, trying to use the same technology as Bitcoin. And that is something that's got to be watched. It will take a few years. It will take probably longer than the people doing it think that it will. But I've never really seen a movement with so much energy and enthusiasm as that. So, and in my experience looking at fringe groups, you kind of get a feeling when something's really going to happen. And it's always about the energy and belief and ideas of the people that are doing it. And of all of them, I've never seen somewhere with so much energy. And to me, that's as important as the tech, because there's just so much enthusiasm and belief and people working hard. And that's what tends to make things change. Maybe you've got to say something about Bitcoin.
Yeah, well, I can't predict the future of Bitcoin, but what we know so far that some people, some fringes, were overstepping Satoshi's vision. So Bitcoin is right now divided to banksters, let's say bankers. Bankers took over Bitcoin, and now we have Bitcoin Cash as a result of that. And it's made on one blockchain to rule it all. So they are standing for their own version of Bitcoin, aside from a group which joined bankers. I actually want to say banksters all the time. And having banks in Bitcoin is not really that good idea. I read in I think Cointelegraph the other day that JP Morgan was on court for charging so-called surprise taxes. So they were basically trying to charge to people who were changing Bitcoin Cash to any other currency without letting them know. So being under the rule of banks can put you in a debt for a lifetime. And being under the rule of tax offices and governments who actually want to number you and tax you and know everything about you can be a dead race. You can never get out of that. Bitcoin is currently a way out. And as I say, it helped people overcome financial crisis and even wars in Venezuela, in Greece as well. And I hope it will keep living to the benefit of all of us. But as any other federated system like Linux, there's a lot of dialogue around it, there are a lot of projects. A voting system has been made a few days ago by a 14-year-old developer. He started when he was 8 or 9, and he was inspired by his dad's work. So when he was 14, he actually made a voting system based on blockchain, which basically means that your vote is irreversible, and it kind of stops, for now, it kind of stops voter coercion. That doesn't stop your government to give you a goat and to pay your vote on blockchain platform, but it does stop people from having what we say Bulgarian train on the voting places. Thank you.
Knet je bila knjiga koja je bila povod za ovaj razgovor, za ovaj susret, a još mnogo dobrih naslova u okviru edicije Netopija u izdanju Lagune možete da potražite bilo na sajtu, bilo u našoj knjižari. Hvala.